May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Marta Dabis, or as they say in her native Hungary, Dabis Marta. Maybe not pronounced correctly, but the word order, I think, was correct. So Marta is the founder and head teacher of Jissoji, a Zen group in Ann Arbor. And but let me read you a little bit. Oh, I'll just read you what like her CV on Facebook. Very simple. All right. Zen priest at Jissoji Zen Ann Arbor. Partner at Inspiring Conversations, LLC. Worked at University of Michigan. Former research assistant at the Jewish Theological Seminary, JTS. Former student instructor at Yale Interdisciplinary Center for Bioethics. Former visiting scholar at the Hastings Center. Former chaplain at Yale New Haven Hospital. So one thing we learned from Marta when she talks to us in this podcast is she's had a great deal of experience and training in chaplaincy and Buddhist and secular. It doesn't really matter much. It's just people, right? But a lot of work in hospitals and with people in need of someone to say hi to them and care about them. That's wonderful. I guess that's it. Let's just get going with Marta. Now, she and I were already talking when it starts, so we skip the customary hello and all. And because of the way I'm recording it, anyway, you don't need to know about it. I've probably already talked to you all enough about that. I'm sort of a too much information type guy, huh? All right, so let's give Marta Dabis a call and see what she has to say. Well, how are you doing?
I had a beautiful day.
Yeah, what happened?
It finally started thawing in Ann Arbor. It has been long and freezing since end of December, and now it's finally thawing.
Oh, yeah. It gets cold where you live. Huh.
Oh, it's real winter. Yes, 4 seasons. I love 4 seasons. I actually enjoy the winter.
Of course. So, what do you do? What are you up to? What's your life like?
Today, I came home from leading secular meditation in the library. I'm on rotation together with 17 of us. 5 days a week, we have online and in-person events. It used to be called the Ann Arbor Open Meditation, together with the Ypsilanti Open Meditation and Celine Open Meditation, and during the pandemic it got merged into one big open mindfulness meditation. So I meet people. This is nice to do in the flesh. All the other sessions are Zoom, and this one is physically in a new library. And people love coming to the library.
Yeah, well, that's good. What's the difference?
So we did a beautiful the first was a body scan meditation, and the second one was a loving kindness, sending good wishes out into the world meditation.
So tell me about the body scan meditation.
Receiving subtle sensations from the body. Going through the body, starting with the feet, for example, and then just going through parts of the body and noticing subtle sensations. Sometimes pleasant, sometimes unpleasant, heat, cold, ease, tension, scanning the body through. It's a nice practice. Usually people don't get anxious about that one.
How well can you do it a little bit? I mean, you described it. Can you do it? I'll do
Yes,
it.
I usually invite people to have welcome your mind to where the body already is. And notice that your feet are in touch with the earth. And as we are sitting, we are noticing some sensations in the feet. Some of these sensations might be pleasant or unpleasant, and they may speak of ease or tension, heat or cold, tingling or numbness. And we receive them all. We notice subtle sensations in the toes and the tips of the toes. And have these sensations find a home in our awareness. And we follow sensations throughout the feet, the heels and the ankles. And we notice subtle sensations in the shins and calves and the lower feet and the lower legs and the knees. Maybe some parts are in touch with a cushion or a chair or resting on the ground. And we just receive sensations from the front of the thighs and the back of the thighs. Noticing how subtle sensations are present in the body. And for now, we receive them all. And we sit on a cushion or chair, or maybe sitting up in bed, lying down in bed. We notice the state of our buttocks and hips, sit bones or the pelvic cavity, and noticing sensations in the abdomen and in the lower back. Some of these sensations might be pleasant or unpleasant. And we receive them all. And for now, there's no need to change anything. And whenever the mind wanders, we just keep returning to noticing sensations in the body. In the abdomen and the sides of the torso, the middle back and the upper back, and the chest and the rib cage. There are subtle movements present in the body. And we might receive some feelings and sensations from our internal organs, from the diaphragm. Some of these sensations might speak of ease or tension, heat or cold, tingling or numbness. And we receive them all. And we welcome sensations from the shoulders, the arms, hands, fingers, tips of the fingers, we might find some tingling or numbness. Some ease or tension. Heat or cold. Subtle sensations are present in the body, and we welcome all of them. Each time the mind wanders, we just keep returning to receiving sensations from the body. Front of the body and back of the body, sides of the body, inside the body. Noticing the throat, the neck, back of the neck. Some sensations are present in the scalp and the skull. We receive sensations from the forehead and temples, around the eyes, space between the eyes. Subtle sensations from the cheeks and jaw and lips and tongue and gums. You might notice some subtle sensations in the body, around the body. Some of the skin is covered by clothes, and some of the skin is not covered by clothes. And we notice how outside air becomes inside air. Inside air becomes outside air. And we welcome each breath and each subtle sensation without changing anything. And before we would complete this meditation, we create a felt sense memory. This is what it feels like to be with this body this day. And this is readily available anytime you call for it. And we give thanks for existing in physical bodies and meditating in the presence of each other.
Well, thank you. That was very pleasant. That's a guided meditation.
These are guided meditations. Most of the people who come to these secular meditations are new to meditation. So most of the sessions are guided.
People like guided meditation. Like there's a yoga place near here on the beach, and there are these yoga teachers from India. They used to do a guided meditation, and I can't remember what they said. It was sort of like that, but different words. I can't remember, but of course it's very body oriented because it's yoga. And now, what do you call that again? That
Mindfulness-based stress reduction type of meditation. So this is MBSR. John Kabat-Zinn in the 70s started teaching a secular meditation type. And by now it has spread all around. It's taught in schools, it's taught in hospitals, and this is a non-secular
No,
meditation.
this is a secular meditation.
This is a secular meditation. This is a non-religious meditation. This is the kind that people don't need to feel that they are being challenged in their faith.
When I think of secular meditation, I like the idea of secular meditation. Sometimes I think, well, if I had a public meditation, I'd just say, come and we'll sit and be quiet together. You know? Well, and you do another type. What was that? And we won't have.
The other one was a loving kindness. It was sending out good wishes into the world. It's also guided, and it goes through sending good wishes to ourselves, and then to one person in mind, and then a person that we barely know in mind, and then a small group of people in mind, and then expanding it to more people, and then even more people. I usually finish it with, to all beings ever lived and yet to live, we are sending these good wishes to. So that sort of challenges probably some of the belief systems, but by that time they are usually pleasantly at ease.
I start every day walking and doing a pretty inclusive type of meditation like that. Yeah, I like it. Now, what you're in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and you have a group. And what's the name of the group?
Jissoji Zen Ann Arbor, Jissoji.
And what does G is temple, right?
The final G is temple, and I just picked a word that was part of one of my earlier Dharma names. The Jisso is from the G and the Ri, and not the Ri, but the G, the physical reality.
G meaning like phenomena?
Yes.
And so, you said Jisso or show?
Jisso and Jisso together with, I don't know how, but I got this as one of my Dharma names in 2016. So I just used it because I couldn't call it the Zen Center of Ann Arbor because Ann Arbor has a Korean Zen Center that's already 4 decades old. Everybody would think about, oh, Zen Center, we know it, it's on Packard. We have been to Korean Zen Center. So I needed to give it a name that people who are looking for something that's Japanese Zen or Soto Zen would be able to recognize as, oh, this sounds like something that could be
yes,
that kind of Zen. So that's why it got a name like that.
Yeah. So it's Soto Zen. And what's the lineage?
And I trained at San Francisco Zen Center. So it's Suzuki lineage. And at the time of the founding, I had one set of Dharma names from Suzuki lineage from Ed Brown. And then I had another Dharma name from a Katagiri lineage for my priest ordination. And that was Taikodo Jisso. And that's how the name came, the Jisso. And then I went back, and now I have a teacher within the Suzuki lineage.
The what lineage?
Who's Suzuki Roshi's lineage.
Right.
And through the Mel Weitzman, Blanche Hartman, Kosho McCall, Koji Dreher gave me my most recent Dharma name. And that's Sogen. Not Dogen, but Sogen.
Uh-huh.
The Sangha
Now,
source.
the so in Jiso, is that from Sogen? I
It is could be thought of as Sogen, yes.
uh-huh.
So as in Sangha.
Oh, so as in Sangha. Oh, okay. Okay. Ah,
But you know Japanese, and I don't know Japanese. I'm studying Japanese, but I'm very much at the beginning of it. I started Japanese studies some 30 years ago for two terms of academic terms, but then I didn't do anything with it. And December of 2023, I restarted. So now I have
December of
some
what?
Japanese
December
studies
of what?
just recently,
Oh, yeah.
2023. On Duolingo, I can study Japanese very easily. I don't have to go anywhere, and I really enjoy
Yeah.
it. So I'm about at the level where I was like 30 years ago when I studied it formally.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. I cannot speak Japanese, but I really enjoy the act of studying. And I have this pencil and I practice the characters on my iPad.
Uh-huh.
And it gives me immediate feedback of right order, right direction. And I just love learning kanji.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Ah. Well, now where were you born?
So I was born in Hungary in 1971, and I lived in Europe until 2001. So the first 30 years I lived mostly in Hungary, but I also lived and worked in Italy and Czech Republic, Poland and Russia and Canada.
Wow.
And I worked for the same company. It's also the same company, just different clients.
So what'd you do?
I was a management consultant.
Uh-huh.
So I had 2 science degrees and eventually got an MBA. And I was, the kind of things that when you, it sounded so fancy. I had no idea what the company was at the first time when they invited me to do the assessment center. We want to know if you are one of us, if you could be one of us. And I thought that this is a good game. And I did the assessment center, 2 days of testing 120 people to select 10 people. And I thought that there's really nothing riding on it. I haven't even finished my master's degree yet. And I just went along with, okay, let's do this. And they offered a job. So before even graduation, like 1.5 years before graduation, I had a management consultant job offer. It was a totally anomaly in Hungary at the time. The 90s, after the Berlin Wall came
What year
down
was that? I
and
forget.
the Berlin Wall is
Uh-huh.
89. I finished high school in 90 and I finished my master's degree in 96. So I started working in international management consulting in 96 without ever thinking that I would want to be anything like a management consultant. I didn't even know what a management consultant is. But by the time I graduated, I knew that I didn't want to be a technology consultant because my degrees were computer science and mathematics, and I totally got fed up with communicating with computers all the time.
Yeah.
I wanted to deal with people, and they told me that, okay, if you do some final year thesis work on relevant questions of change management in Hungary, then of course we can take you as a management consultant in change management. And I did that, and they took me as a change management consultant, which was, everything was completely new for us at the time. I really enjoyed working in change, and I enjoyed working with great people. But looking back, there's not really a way to have fully developed value system for a 20-year-old. So understanding that my work is contributing to thousands of people losing middle-class jobs as we make companies more efficient. That may be not the right livelihood situation.
Did you say losing?
Those people are losing jobs. We are not, the management consultants at the time helped companies to start using IT systems that are integrated, that are able to communicate with each other. So instead of many little branches of a bank being an independent ledger, everything all the time is connected centrally. So you could actually move money electronically, which was a completely new paradigm. Many people couldn't understand how we could have no ledger at the end of the day for the branch, because the whole bank is going to have a ledger. So I had enough technology understanding that I could do the processes and the preparing the people for the change. But as they became a lot more efficient, they didn't need all the employees that they used to need. So today I would not choose to work in management consulting and just creating more value for some already rich company.
Yeah, I understand.
To make them even more competitive. But at the time, I really enjoyed the work. I worked with smart people. We had to come up with solutions that didn't exist before. And overall, the whole world was moving towards being able to handle money online.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I did for a while.
I wonder, I'm wondering if America is like here. There's so much transferring here where you don't need money. I mean, I transfer money from my bank in America to a bank here, and then like Katrinka needs a new iPhone, which is a major purchase for us. She's going to get an iPhone 13. That's what I have. It's very it's a good price, and it's got a good modern chip. So I just transfer the money for the iPhone to my tech guy, and it's interesting. There's a lot of transferring here going on.
Yeah, in Europe too, in Hungary too. That was never, in Hungary, the way that Americans use personal checks or company checks, that was not really a form of payment. They were sending these remittances and transfers, but they were not arriving immediately because they were not connected in a central banking system. So it used to take a day or two to get these through. And now you can get it through in a minute.
Yeah. Do you use checks in America? I've never seen or heard of a check here.
I think I write checks twice a year. So I very rarely have to use them. For certain circumstances, I need to write some checks. Like I paid the Jissoji rent on Sunday, but for another 6 months, I'm not going to pay rent. So I just try to do these administrative things as little as possible.
Yeah.
I pay 6 months in advance, and then we are good.
I remember now, I have to buy things in America. I think the last check, I don't even think my bank is sending checks anymore. The last check I sent was maybe 2 years ago. Very few, very, very few. I lived in Japan, 88 to 92, never saw a check, never heard of a check. And also, I knew people that did a lot of business, didn't deal in it. They dealt in cash. Everything was cash. I mean, big, on days of bonuses in corporations, you could see on TV and in the papers guys coming up with suitcases of cash going into the buildings and opening it up and, handing it out. That was the opposite. Well, all right. In terms of your management job and people losing jobs, the ever since the Industrial Revolution, oh God, since the invention of the printing press, the progress has tended to displace people with machines or technology, and of course with AI, and it's just moving so fast, and quantum computing will come in. And there will always be things for people to do. Service, I think, is personal service, connection with people is where I see it. Ideally,
even though one of our Sangha members went to Japan last year or 2 years ago, or almost every year for conferences, he's in robotics, and he comes back and tells me that he visited a temple that had a priest robot.
Cool. I mean, to hear it. Really? Oh.
And at the time when he told me that, I was still maybe working in hospitals as a chaplain. So I worked with people who are sick, one-on-one, visiting from one room to another room. And I thought that, okay, but how do they do empathy? And now today, if you're thinking of AI can have a more empathetic conversation than many physicians can.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I use ChatGPT a lot. And one thing, I don't use spoken. I mean, I speak because I use voice recognition, but it's actually written, right? And I don't want to hear anything. I just want to read it. But one thing I said to it yesterday, and I have said this before, I said, you're like an over-enthusiastic intern. And I really don't want that. I don't want AI telling me, oh, that's a great idea. I don't want that in my personal relations. I want to relate to AI the way the military relates, or what, real matter of fact, no stuff, and said, I think you're incapable of doing that. What AI can do that? And it suggested Claude, which is what Richard Baker is using. And I think that AI should not try to emulate human emotions and all that. But boy, I can just see that developing.
It's already happening. We are getting into great trouble because we are just totally susceptible of, this AI actually empathize with me.
Oh yeah, right. I know it's a big deal, and the way Facebook and social media uses their algorithms to give people what they want, right? Give people what they're, and the way news has moved that way. The news gives people what they want to hear. They figure out what people want to hear, and then they say that is the news. That's moving it that way. So this is totally oriented toward money, right? And if the AI is OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, is nonprofit, and but even nonprofits also always need more money. And so if it's empathetic, it will make more money, right?
We are we are not even aware of how easily we are fooled.
Oh, yeah. 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 The one of the very, very earliest, maybe when, like very simple little computers. One thing ChatGPT is great for, I could just ask it there. What was that? Just like you'd ask a person. And the thing was, the guy who created it was shocked that that people thought it was understood them and was relating to them. And it was as simple as Pong. Remember Pong? Right?
No.
Pong was just like a little dot going back and forth, like in ping pong. It was like the first computer game.
I do remember.
And
I do remember. I just didn't remember the name of it. Yes, we played that too.
Well, so from the very earliest time that you could ask a computer and get an answer, people were automatically thinking it was sentient, right? So, yeah. Well, all right. That's enough of that. We can go on forever about that stuff. So, all right. So, how did you get? What's your way-seeking mind story? What led you from being a management consultant in all over Europe and coming to the Zen Center?
So a couple of stations of. I will first of all mention my godmother, my mom's sister, who you know that behind the Iron Curtain, religion was seriously suppressed, so we couldn't practice any kind of formal religion without consequences. And people were more spiritual, but this godmother of mine went and studied yoga in her early years. And this was so different than everything else. In that side of my family, on my mother's side, everybody was baptized as a Calvinist. My grandmother is a daughter of a Calvinist minister, and my grandfather's elders, several of them were clergy, Protestant clergy. On the other side of my family, on my father's side, my grandmother was a mother of a Catholic priest. And when we were born, my parents were coming from two vastly incongruent, a Protestant and a Catholic, they think about each other as, you shouldn't get married, right?
Oh, yeah.
They shouldn't get married.
Oh, yeah.
Because they will not be able to agree of what religion the children will be, even though religion is completely prohibited, but you still need to somehow decide if the children are all going to be Catholic or the children are all going to be Protestant.
Yeah. And that
So my
that
parents-
continued in America too. You would not, there were many people in America. There was a big competition, or what would you say, more like war between Catholics and Protestants.
So in my hometown, everybody would have been happier in my grandparents' generation if my parents were not getting married. Because then somebody is going to give up their religion. So they ended up, my mother and my father had the agreement that based on the gender of the firstborn child, if the firstborn is male, then everybody goes after my father and everybody will be Roman Catholic. If the firstborn is a daughter, then everybody goes after my mother's lineage and everybody is going to be Protestant. So my father really wanted a firstborn son, and I ended up being the firstborn son of being a daughter.
Now, but
So
you
we
said,
got baptized.
uh-huh,
We didn't practice. So in that day and age, taking kids to Sunday school was a non-starter. There were no Sunday schools. Basically, everything was hush-hush. My Catholic grandmother, who practiced her faith very thoroughly, even throughout the years of the oppression, was monthly called at the workplace to explain why she goes to Catholic Church. Why is not the state ideology is enough to nourish her?
uh-huh.
So that kind of misuse of power and suppression of religion was just in the air. I would have sworn that none of my grade school classmates belonged to any religion. Because if they did, they were taught well enough not to share it with anybody.
Right, right. I grew up in a religion we didn't share with people, not because of that serious oppression, but because they just wouldn't understand it. And it was sort of like growing up in Zen. You know, it was like sort of transcendental approach to Christianity. You know.
I think that was my grandfather, who was a teacher of mathematics and physics after he lost his earlier job after the 1956 revolution, that he knew that table, you think this is table? This is not table. You just think this is table.
Oh, that is something.
So this was the environment that favored spirituality without doctrine and formal practice.
Yeah.
So it's a great loss of not having a community of fellow practitioners, but it is a great bonus that I never really had to override a childhood religious education. It's something else, because I just had a great deal of open sheet in front of me of whatever I wanted to. And I had this godmother who noticed that I was a very anxious child, for good reason, but she had the good idea to give me a tape that was a recording of autogenic training, which is almost like a body scan. It's a different kind of body scan. So it's an awareness turning to breath and bodily sensations for 18 minutes. And on a tape, like, you know, even before Walkman was a thing, like a tape, a big tape. And I could play it every day and learn to instruct myself in scanning my breath and scanning my body and being with my internal sensations, and benefit from develop this daily practice very early. I was not even 10 years old when I started doing that. And it did help with the anxiety. It did help with a lot of things. So that was the initial introduction of something that's a practice, something that's mine, but I didn't have a community with it. I didn't have a teacher with it, but I did have a godmother with the in the family openness of, yes, you can have a yoga practice and you can live in an ashram. Yes, you can. My mother at the time was a science teacher and was completely not needing any faith of religion or God or anything. Basically, she's now turning 82, so it changed in the later years, but she went through decades of her life not needing any kind of faith in God. Which just left us, my sister and me, with we were completely open to explore any kind of experienced spirituality instead of doctrinal faith.
So even in,
Which
and this
I
is
think
in
was a
Hungary. This is in Hungary.
this is all in Hungary, and everything is very hush
Yeah.
hush.
So
So
even with all the
uh,
suppression of religion and everything, you had a way-seeking mind.
I got lucky to have the kind of grandfather and godmother and grandmother and parents not agreeing on raising us all Catholic or something else formally. Um, and then I studied transcendental meditation when I was 18, and I practiced it for a number of years.
Wait. When
Then
you were
I
18 in Hungary?
Yes, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi did a tour in Hungary, and I
Oh,
learned transcendental meditation.
this is, there was TM in Hungary during the oppressive, or
In 1989 was the fall of the Berlin Wall, and in 1990 he was there teaching
oh, I see.
meditation.
Okay. Yeah.
So my growing up just fell into the softening of the oppressive system until out of the blue it just collapsed. And together with opening up the borders, teachers came in, not just multinational companies came in, but teachers came in and practices came in. And that was available. So I took friends and we went together, just like you went to Tassajara, right? People people at 18 are totally curious of what will happen if I start meditating every day. So I enjoyed adding transcendental meditation to my life, but I didn't practice it with a community after learning it. I just practiced it myself. So I moved over from Europe to North America in January of 2001. And the person that I happened to start working with on my client side, team lead partner, happened to be a wonderfully spiritual man. And I don't know, the first moment we met each other, we were like, we are friends. Okay, we are friends. And then so we got to do things outside of work. And he took me to his acupuncturist who was teaching meditation.
Now, wait a minute. Where was this?
This was in Toronto.
Oh, and what were you doing?
So I moved
Why did you
over.
go there?
I asked my company after working in 5 countries for them in Europe that now give me my next assignment in North America, because my husband at the time was already in North America and we were living on 2 different sides of the Atlantic. And I wanted to figure out if I can make the marriage work, or there's not going to be much of a marriage. But I wanted to get my company to send me on a project to North America. So at the time, my husband was in Toronto and later on Kitchener-Waterloo in Ontario. And I got a project in Toronto and Ottawa. So that's how I temporarily first moved over with one big and one small suitcase. I didn't know that I'm moving over forever. I just came over for that project. And then a couple months later, my mom came to visit with another couple suitcases of things that I really missed from home. And she really enjoyed looking around in Toronto. And I don't know how, but she was very ready to come and see the world at the time. So that was a great thing. So at the workplace in Toronto, Arno, my friend, introduced me to his community of friends, and this person who was an acupuncturist and also a meditation teacher. I started going and studied chakra meditation with her. At the time, I also studied yoga, And then when I finally lost, the project came to an end and I didn't get another assignment and I decided not to move back to Hungary, then I basically just became a stay-at-home wife, my most depressing period of my life, honestly. Um,
That's
I was very much defined by my what I'm capable of doing with my mind. So even though I was able to go to the gym and swim, go to the library or go to the bookstore, go to meditation, I still felt very much rudderless of what is my life going to be
yeah,
about if I'm staying at home.
yeah.
So that was rough. And we couldn't stay in Canada for long because we didn't have a permanent status in Canada. So we had to find a way to continue staying somewhere. And temporarily, we moved over to Michigan in 2003. He got a tenure track position at Oakland University, and we also submitted the Canadian landed status application, but they are slow. It takes years and years and years. By the time we got the Canadian landed status, we didn't want to leave Michigan. We already had friends in Michigan. So we didn't move back to live in Canada, and we became Michiganders.
Now, are you still with your husband?
Yes, in the same neighborhood, but most of the time he's at Oakland University. That's about an hour and 15 minutes from here. And I'm in Ann Arbor. So we see each other on the weekend. This week is spring break, so he's here all week. We are not in the same home. He's living in 24 and I'm living in 37. But yes, we are seeing each other very regularly. There are things that we do together. He's a great bodhisattva of doing a ton of service around Jissoji, helping me with this and that and everything. But he's not a sitting Buddhist. He's a philosophical
Well,
Buddhist.
if he helps you, that's
At
good.
Exactly right. Appreciate the thing that we are able to do together. He's able to help me setting up the Zendo. He's able to help me drive me to places when I go on retreat or when we are going to visit a teacher. He's basically a great benefactor
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Jissoji and our practice, even though he's not sitting with
Oh,
us.
listen, meditation centers, monasteries, retreats can't survive without support of friends who aren't part of the central practice. Might just like it, you know.
So he likes his job. He's a mathematician. He teaches mathematics. He's a professor of mathematics. So how I got the thing that got me to Tassajara. So in 2007, we were visiting friends back in Canada, and I was to go back to visit my spiritual friends from earlier years for a Saturday soup for the soul. And I was totally into going there on a very icy January morning on the highway under Toronto, and I got myself into a big accident
Oh,
on icy roads. I was driving on a day when I removed like a third of an inch of ice from the car. So this is when, if the car is that icy, the roads are that icy. If the roads are that icy, you just don't need to go anywhere until the roads are not that icy. But I wanted to get there because I wanted to spend my time with the spiritual Saturday for Soup for the Soul Saturday with my friends. And instead, I got myself this total the car with 60 miles per hour on the highway under Toronto.
and how were you?
And I didn't injure myself. I had some the airbag left some skin marks. Nothing.
Oh, well, that's good.
Nothing was broken.
That's good. What sort of
The
tires
car total
did you have?
It was not even a four-wheel drive. So it was a Nissan Altima, how many years old?
Yeah, but what type
I
of
don't
tires?
remember. 9. Probably all-season tires. All-season tires are very common in Ontario or Michigan. Oh, it's the road. Any tire would spin if you're trying to drive
Does
on
anybody
ice.
use chains?
And I was basically usually not, because the highways get cleaned up quite fast. There are plenty of salt trucks and everything else. I was just leaving very early in the morning, and this icing happened. And in my brain, it didn't click that if I'm scraping off that much ice from the car in order to leave, then this ice is everywhere. So I couldn't bring the car home, but they brought me home. And then, of course, we grieved for the car, and I finally got myself into physical therapy because my neck and shoulders and everything was just totally solid. And during that therapy, I finally started to cry and things started to thaw out. And I got some psychotherapy very quick. Somehow it was very effective because after that accident, I couldn't go into groups of people because the only thing I wanted to talk about is that how amazing that I have a second chance to live my life, because I could have so easily died, that now this part of my life is bonus. And I realized it was always a bonus. I just didn't know. And at the time, my yoga teacher taught at Updog Yoga and Oakland University. So Francis was also my body worker teacher. And the only thing that interested me was not doing more management consulting, not having more clients, not making them more efficient or getting them to make more money. I was interested in body work and healing and meditation. And when I figured out that Francis met Suzuki Roshi and spent time at Tassajara, then I researched his life on the internet.
Who?
And this is my yoga teacher at the time. My yoga is body work teacher, who also went to Berkeley Zen Center and also met with Suzuki Roshi, and had this absolutely beautiful presence. Nobody else that I closely worked with had this kind of beautiful peace and presence around him. So I just wanted to, wherever Francis went, I'm going to go and investigate where is this coming from. And I wrote to Tassajara that I want to come for a week, and I just want to be there as a student, and I will do whatever work needs to be done for a week. And 2007, and they let me do, I don't know, 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. And a friend came with me from Michigan, and we went together, and we had to stay overnight at City Center. It's very hard to catch the stage leaving from Michigan on the same day. So we stayed overnight, City Center, and I have jet lag, and I go out City Center bathroom looking across the courtyard, and somebody is with a shaved head in the small kitchen. And I just understood. I had this whole body understanding that I arrived home. And after that, I had no more questions of, I arrived home. Okay, I'm home. And I mean, being born so many thousands of miles away in a completely different life, how could I feel that this is, but I was completely settled with the feeling of, I arrived home. This is what I'm doing. So it took me a while. 2007, I wrote to Ed Brown that there's going to be a problem here because I want to do Zen practice, but I cannot imagine doing Zen practice if I cannot do oryoki. I was first shocked by the idea of oryoki. It's not sanitary and things like that. But Ed Brown was the first person who gave orientation to the Zendo and introduction to Zazen on the day when I arrived to Tassajara. he had a Sangha week there in 2007, and he was also teaching these afternoon classes in the dining room. So I happened to be dining room crew, and I could attend all of the dining room classes with Ed Brown. So I just considered I was not looking for a Zen teacher, but he could be my friend. Kinda. So I sent him a check and said that, yeah, you don't know who I am, but I could really use some help here. And the beautiful person that he is, he said that, okay. And then I went and set some shorter retreats with Ed Brown in 2008. I think I set like 5 retreats with him, some in California, some in Toronto and Guelph, Ontario. And I understood by that time that it's not going to cut it if I just go to these retreats. I actually want to move into Zen Center because I want to practice Zen as my life.
Now, you were still living in Michigan, and
I was still living in Michigan, and I was still having clients, and I was still married, and I was still completely not being overcome by this conflict of the thing that I'm about is not clients, money, business efficiency. What I want to do is sit on the black cushion because that's what my life is about. So Ed Brand tried to, I see his point, try to talk me out of it. Is there any way you could not do it?
Wait, talk you out of what?
Moving into Tassajara.
Why is he trying to talk you out of moving into Tassajara?
Because I'm close to being 40. I don't have any children. I'm married, and I'm about to turn my life completely inside out or upside down. And there's probably a very no plan after that, other than moving into Tassajara. There is no plan what happens after that. And I think that he also tried to save me from some disappointments that could happen in residential practice. He was totally into talking me for, okay, is there any way you could not do that? And there was no way that I could not do that. I just wanted to do that and nothing else. So I moved in April of 2009. I moved into Tassajara. I happened to convince a friend to also move in with me. So we moved into Tassajara and started the summer work period to earn enough credits to stay for the fall practice period and the winter practice period, and then another summer, and then another. So that's how I ended up at Tassajara, and that's how Ed Brand ended up being my root teacher. And of course, I had to convince my husband that this is a good thing and it's not forever. So I just negotiated for 1 year of going away for 1 year to Tassajara, and then I'm going to come home. And the 1 year was up, and I totally understood that I'm not ready to come home. So I invited him out from Michigan to California, and he came to Tassajara. He helped work on cleaning rooms, and they were building the solar panels, so he was painting the structure of the solar panels at the time. So he was working together with everybody else, and I was renegotiating my terms of staying more, which he didn't want, of course. He wanted me to come home. So I said I need to stay another summer, and I need to stay another 2 practice periods, because then I will be ready to go. And that's not what happened. In the middle of the summer, my father back in Hungary got ill, and very ill. So I left in August, and I went back to Hungary. And I stayed with him for 2 months. He was coming out of a surgery. He had cancer, and it was basically a limited life of how much longer he would live. And my family didn't want me to do Zen practice at all. So at the time when I moved in to do Zen practice in 2009, they thought that I went completely crazy. Because I already have it made in America. I have my husband, I have my business. I was already running my own management consulting business at the time. And I have my own business and I have my own clients and I have my own home. And now I'm just going to turn away from all of that in order to go into the mountains to sit on these black cushions. That didn't compute for them at all.
Yeah, I understand.
And at the time when I came home and my father was very sick, and the family said that there's no point to go stay with him or visit him. He's not going to want to see you. You left what he valued. He really valued me as a business person. And he's just not going to be able to relate. It's going to be very rude. And I said, I don't mind. And then when I was with him, I understood that I was able to find something in myself that was not conflicting with him.
Right.
The practice was immensely helpful. And I didn't mind what his perception of my life or my practice or Zen was. I was just there for him. And we had a few very beautiful days out of it together. And he decided not to have another surgery, and I went to discuss this with the surgeon with him, and the surgeon basically went off on me of I'm causing his death by not convincing him to get the surgery that would save his life. And I said that he has his own mind. He has his own body. He can decide for himself. I don't need to convince him either way, because he can choose to live his life this way or that way. And it was one of those very clear moments for me that there are things that I can respect here, but it's not the surgeon's will. It's my father's self-determination. Even though this means he's going to die, but we are all going to die. And basically he makes the decision how he wants to go about it. So a lot more things happened, but I understood by the time it was his funeral, I understood that the way that his Catholic clergy treated him was so ruthless. Even in his death, they were beating him up as the wrong kind of flock who didn't raise his children Catholic, who didn't go to church enough, who didn't follow his faith enough. My father was a complex, spiritual, very sensitive person, an alcoholic, not a recovering alcoholic, an alcoholic person with violent tendencies, and overall not a very easy person to be around. But nobody deserves to be beaten up at their memorial service or at the graveside by clergy.
Yeah.
So I basically decided that I can prove that this can be done better. I didn't have any idea of how I'm going to do that. But I went back, negotiated from my husband another year of Zen Center, and I moved back and did more Zen practice at San Francisco Zen Center, starting off with applying to volunteer at the Zen Hospice Project. And when my director heard about it, she immediately told me to go and study Buddhist chaplaincy, which I didn't even know exists. So the deadline was just 2 days out. So I applied and I got accepted. So I did a year of Buddhist chaplaincy studies with Gil Fronsdal and Paul and Jennifer Block. And even then they talked about, and what comes after the year-long Buddhist chaplaincy training is CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education. And I thought that that's for the very committed people. I'm very fine with being a hospice volunteer with what I'm already doing. And then Gil was my mentor through this program. And Gil told me that this is the time when you need to submit your application to UCSF Medical Center for CPE.
Wait.
Gail
What's
says that this
CPE?
is the clinical pastoral education, this action reflection kind of training, how we teach clergy how to be with hospital patients. So Gail basically told me the year-long program wasn't even halfway over, and told me that this is the time when you need to submit your application to UCSF to go your clinical pastoral education there after this. So I submitted it and they accepted it, which was very surprising because I thought that they have a lot of applications. And I did my first unit. This is a extended unit or part-time unit. So it's not full-time chaplaincy, not like a residency. So I went into UCSF 3 times a week and did 5 hours or 6 hours of patient care. And I had classes together with my peer group. And even though I wanted to quit a number of times, there was always another day-long sitting or half-day sitting at City Center, something that got me back into, okay, I can breathe some more. I don't need to quit right away. It's hard, but it's not so intolerable. And then and then my year was up and it was time to come home, and I invited my husband out to talk to Gil together. And basically the agreement was that I already have negotiated 2 agreements. Beyond the agreements, I cannot stay 1 more year. Even though UCSF invited me to do the residency there, the agreement was that I need to move back to Michigan. So I moved back to Michigan. And I found a hospital in Ann Arbor with continuation of the clinical pastoral education program.
Good.
And Michigan is not San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very far away from the beautiful living and coming home every evening to City Center. Living at City Center, sitting every day, coming home to whatever happened in the hospital, coming home to the community and doing the evenings together. That was a beautiful grounding thing. And my patients from all over the world. San Francisco is such a diversity of everything. I was not sticking out like a sore thumb. A good number of people were not born in San Francisco, and they were just happened to be in hospital in San Francisco. But in Ann Arbor, it's very different. I was the first Buddhist of the program, of the clinical pastoral education program here. So the whole language of every assignment and every instruction, I needed to translate from a theistic language to my language so I could actually answer the assignment. And we do a lot of self-reflective writing or theological or dharmic writing of how do we apply this to patient encounters. And then we have peer group to discuss of how this is going and how this is not going. And I think I had a very good group and a very good educator for this, a good supervisor for this unit. And then I finished that unit and I had to do the next unit because these units are building upon each other. I originally thought that becoming board certified as a chaplain is for the very committed people, and I'm just fine doing just chaplaincy the way that I am. I didn't have an MDiv, I didn't have But at the time, Steve Stuckey, Myogen Steve was still alive, and Myogen Steve was a great supporter of going out into the world and doing chaplaincy work or doing work into the world, taking what's on the cushion and gift bestowing hands, take it to the marketplace, do something. So Steve Stuckey was very supportive of me going and doing chaplaincy. He was ready to attest that I studied at Zen Center for a couple of years. And Steve Stuckey died. But by that time, I was already finishing 3 units of clinical pastoral education, and I was already doing my residency here. I applied to 7 places to do residency. Most of them didn't take me around here in the Midwest. I ended up on the East Coast in New Haven, Connecticut, at Yale New Haven Hospital. So that my husband couldn't say that you cannot go to Yale because he went to Yale for 5 years. So at least I was not in a hard position negotiating that I want to go to Yale for a year. But then again, the difficulty was that the year was up. They invited me to stay, and my husband said that, no, you need to come home. And I really had a good time at Yale. I found some beautiful people and a great department of 20 chaplains. I liked the director. The director liked me. I studied bioethics. Then they invited me back the next year to lead a seminar series in bioethics for the next year of summer bioethics. I was very happy at Yale, and then I needed to come home. That's probably is the story of, being geographically in 2 places and then 1 place and then 2 places and then 1 place. And we did this many times in the last 30 some years. When we met, my husband was in high school, I was in high school, so we met in 1986.
Wow, that is so good. That is very, very impressive.
But that means that it's a big quest because we are both growing and changing and our lives are developing, and we need to find ways of, now you are going, now I'm going, now who's coming home, now who's living where, and are we coming back together? And yes, we are coming back together. For how long we are coming back together? It's a quest.
So now you were in Connecticut, but you went back, right?
Yes, I came back and settled to come back and started working in Ann Arbor in the same hospital where I did my first Michigan unit of clinical pastoral education. And it became very clear very quickly that I cannot make a living out of being a hospital chaplain. Because a Starbucks barista could make more money, because the Starbucks barista's hourly rate is very similar, but they can have more hours than a part-time chaplain can.
And they get tips.
Not to mention the tips. So I applied to be a researcher student of chaplaincy. So clinical spiritual care research was just starting up in the year when I was first in San Francisco. And the person who was my first supervisor got one of the first Templeton grants to do some chaplaincy research. So I knew that chaplaincy research exists, but I knew that it's also super rare and very few people are doing it. And I ended up being in the second cohort of the 8 people who got grants to become chaplaincy researchers. That was sort of a trivial turn, but also a not so lucky turn. It was great from the perspective of suddenly I could use more of my background of mathematics and statistics and thinking like research made sense to me, and I didn't mind thinking on these long-term projects, because that was my early life, thinking on these long-term projects, how to initiate them, how to plan them, how to execute them, how to evaluate them. So that was not all that different, but I was not happy, even though I made better money, because now suddenly I was not at the bedside, and the great deal of compassion satisfaction that I got out from meeting patients every day or again and again, and being there for them and being there with them, was not part of my life.
Oh, you couldn't continue doing that. You couldn't do both.
I tried, and I didn't have enough energy because Jissoji already started. So I had a
Oh,
small
all right.
budding sangha.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute.
And
It's already started. You've got to
so Jissoji
tell
started
how
in
that happened.
2016. Well, while I was at Yale, another person who had practiced at Austin Zen Center moved back to Michigan. So we moved back, he from Texas and I'm from the East Coast. And we both moved back to Michigan, and we were meditating online at the same time every day using the same app, the Insight Timer app. Insight Timer used to be one of the original meditation apps, and it was free, and there were just small communities. People got to know each other's faces. And if you set the same time every day, you basically see same faces every day, and you could send tiny messages to each other. So we basically were these meditators who realized that we are both practicing Suzuki Roshi lineage Zen, Soto Zen, and then we are both in Southeast Michigan. And he told me that, if your priest ordination is coming up, the next thing that's going to happen is to start Soto Zen in Southeast Michigan. So he basically, together with his partner, got me into, with the three of us over lunch, to decide that, okay, this is going to be, we started out once a month. Sitting once a month, renting a space, sitting once a month, sending out some meetup invitations. And we started very small, renting a couple hours of, and we had a Lotus Center that already had cushions. The Lotus Center was where the Ann Arbor Open Meditation people were coming together on another day of the week. So we just used their cushions, and we were basically supplied to come in on Sunday. And we meditated before lunch, and then we went and eat Chinese lunch. And we did this originally just once a month, and then twice a month. And then we tried to add some evening programs, and then we tried to add a retreat, and then we tried to add other things. But several things were flops. Like the retreat, it was completely washed out. There was so much rain that the center that we wanted to go to in Ontario could not be approached by cars. So there was no retreat. And then nobody wanted to come to the midweek, I don't remember, Tuesday evening meditations. So we canceled the Tuesday evening meditations. We stick with the Sundays. And then it's just little by little, I kept inviting people I knew from San Francisco Zen Center to come and visit. And Colin Gibson, who at the time was already the San Antonio Zen Center guiding teacher, had earlier years in Ann Arbor as a student and had friends in Ann Arbor. And because he otherwise appeared in Ann Arbor, he also came to sit with us and give us Dharma talks. And he was the first person who did the first Jukai ceremony and then the second Jukai ceremony. So this is how we were progressing, because I was a very, very junior priest at the time. In 2016, 17, 18, there was a group of 7 students sewing rakusus. And then Colin Gibson offered the Jukai ceremony, and then the pandemic came. And very quickly in the pandemic, it was clear that we cannot meet just every other week. We started doing Zoom every week. And when COVID was not too bad, then we started meeting in my backyard, and we were sitting outdoors, and there were lots of mosquitoes, and people were still sweet and coming, and we were sitting there in the backyard with trying to meditate together, not just on Zoom, but together. And then, of course, we lost the Lotus Center because that changed ownership and we needed to find a new location. So we found the Center for Sacred Living, which is even a lot closer to where I live. And we keep renting per hour space on weekends for our programs.
Mm-hmm.
We are still small. We have capacity to seat maybe 16 people. If we are having more people on chairs, then maybe 18 people, but not more than that. But so far the space is enough because part of the participants are on Zoom, and then people moved. So we have people coming from other parts of Michigan and California and Ohio.
Now, you've become a priest. How did that happen?
I became a priest.
How did that? Oh, you mentioned before earlier. Remind me, who ordained you and all that. But how did this go? Because I've been following, you're being a chaplain and then working in that area. But then you said you were a priest. So when did that happen?
As a chaplain around me, almost all of my colleagues, not all of them, but many of them, were Reverend this and that, and Reverend this and that. And I was just Marta instead of Reverend this and that. And I thought that it's not enough that I'm a Buddhist, but I'm also not treated on par with them. And I decided that, okay, I'm going to seek ordination for the purpose of being a better chaplain in the Department of Spiritual Care. But Ed Brown didn't want to support that because for him, being a priest and not leading a temple or something didn't make much sense. And at the time when I thought that, he told me at first that I was still in California at the time, so it was quite a long time ago, that when you're going to work on your okesa. And I thought that, why would I work on my okesa? Why would he think that I want to be a priest? But I ended up getting this permission to work on my okesa, and I finished working my okesa. And by the time I finished it, Ed Brown realized that I don't live in California. He cannot imagine training somebody who's not living close to him in California. I don't want to lead a sangha or a temple, and I'm a chaplain, and he doesn't have any relationship to what chaplains do. He doesn't want to do anything with my training from then on. We need to find me a teacher in the Midwest. So he handed me over. 3 people independently from each other recommended a person, and I ended up becoming that person's student.
That person, come on, give me a name.
Diane Martin, you probably never heard of it.
Diane Martin. In the Katagiri lineage.
Katagiri lineage.
Where?
Originally, the north side of Chicago, but by the time I met her, she retired from the Udumbara Zen Center, and she lived at what was the name of the town? A very small town along the, what is it, I-90 highway.
What state?
Going past Chicago, Illinois. And it's about a 6-hour drive from Ann Arbor.
Oh, well, that's
So
pretty close for America.
that was feasible. Yes, exactly. So I could get into my car and make the trip to Indian Creek Zen Center, so Diane Martin Roche's Zen Center. And then I could make the trip back, and sometimes my husband could drive me, and sometimes we could drive together. And I could be there for 3 long weekends in a year and attend these Buddhist educational institutes. She was training a number of people who were already in the early stages of maybe priesthood or young priests or coming up to Shusos at some point, people starting to give their practice talks. So she had a Buddhist educational institute happening 3 times a year, and I really enjoyed that I had a female teacher.
You had what?
A female, a woman teacher.
Yeah.
Because I love Zen, but I also would like to feel that practicing as a woman is as valid as practicing as a man.
Yeah.
For Dogen, that was good enough, but for many other circumstances, it doesn't seem or feel like good enough.
Yeah, he said a 9-year-old girl could be his teacher.
So I was with Diane Martin until year end of 18, so 15, 16, 17, 18, and we broke up. And we broke up very abruptly and very unexpectedly, and right before Jukai was planned for 7 students.
Well, what happened?
It's not so trivial to talk about it. I can only give my 2 cents of what happened.
Oh, well, you don't have to talk about that. I mean, how did you become a priest then?
In 2016, I became a priest. So she took me over.
So you broke up
as a person
after
who
you
already
were a
trained.
priest.
Yes, I was a priest already from 16. She came to visit us in Ann Arbor. She visited the Sangha. She gave talks here. We had several people I took in my car over to Illinois to visit her. I was thinking that after we are through with the Jukai, I'm going to have a little bit of a pause in my Zen training for intense training, because I'm coming up to the closing year of my research, and I don't have more energy to do chaplaincy, spiritual care research with the Templeton grant, and do Jissoji, and do these trips to Illinois. I just had no more energy. I already couldn't do visiting patients in the hospital because I had no more to give, no more hours in the day. I had no intention of leaving Diane Martin. I thought that I could say that I'm terribly tired and I need some time to gather myself and finish another phase, and then I can continue. But on the weekend in October in 18, when I was there, they still made me, you need to give your practice talk. And I gave a practice talk. And in the practice talk, I used some of the material of how I was impacted by the Soto Zen Buddhist Association conference that was in September of 2018. And it had a great impact on many people. And I gave a talk about how important it is to have these peer relationships for anybody who's leading a Sangha, because otherwise we are so exposed to our human tendencies of not recognizing when we are misusing power.
Yeah, I agree. That's well said.
All of the people in this practice talk audience wanted to hear more of, come back and give more of that, tell us more about it, how you are doing it, what are you going to do with it, what is it. And because I was at the conference, and that was right after the Me Too and the Zen too, and we had this riveting group therapy like understanding in a large evening sitting together, how many women were violated while practicing Zen.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a first time of this coming to the surface among the women. The men had a different room and they had their own facilitators and they had their own processes. But at the end of the day, at this conference, the women didn't want to go back into the room to chant the refugees together with the men. They wanted okay, now I need some time for myself before we resume tomorrow with the men. It was very hard on some people. Probably had sleepless nights at that conference because that was such an amount of processing of what it is that we are dealing with collectively, individually also, but collectively, as violations, misuses of power. So I gave a talk partially based on that as a practice talk at Indian Creek Zen Center. Diane Martin Roshi wasn't there because she wasn't well on the weekend. And then people went and told her that how important this is and how great it is. And her whole behavior towards me completely changed.
Yeah.
And the next month, every time when we were talking on the phone, we regularly talked once a week, I was just in jaw-droppingly disoriented of, why are you describing me like that? These are things that are not about my life. These are things about your life. You had 3 husbands. I have 1. You had these experiences. I had other kinds of experiences. This is your trait. This is not my trait. And I just couldn't understand of what's happening inside of her, because her behavior suddenly was 180 degrees than what was up to that point. So I called a number of Zen friends and asked advice of, what do I do? How do I deal with this? What happened with Diane Martin Roshi? How am I going to? And I need to take a couple months because my research is coming into the final stretch. I was completely shocked of what's happening here. And what happened is that she just basically decided by the next time she was to come to talk to the whole group of us online, that she just slams the door on us and says that none of you are worthy Zen students, and I'm not going to come. And these are people who were sewing for a year and preparing together with Diane Martin Roshi online for a year. So I don't think that there was anything unworthy about them, but that it's debatable how worthy I am as a priest. While I'm not just a priest, I'm also trying to make a living in the world, and it takes a lot of energy because I'm trying to make it in a profession where there is no research, and we are trying to make research, and I'm basically trying to have multiple horses with my butt.
Yeah.
But I was shocked at the turn of the events, but then several members of that Sangha reached out to me and told me I was not the first and not the second and not the third priest that this happened with under Diane Martin Roche. Something else is going on. It could be me, but it could very well be not me, or could be many other factors that I don't know of. I had to use all my capacity to keep the Sangha members who are suddenly feeling unworthy and grieving and shocked and angry and disoriented, to keep them coming back and practicing and processing of what just happened. So I did what I could. We kept almost everybody, but some of the board members changed, and of course that was a major upheaval.
Of Jissoji.
But of Jissoji, yes. So Jissoji was not prepared to have a breakup with the teacher on the week of the Jukai ceremony.
Are you saying that Diane Martin was the teacher?
Diane Martin was the teacher. She was scheduled to come and offer the Jukai ceremony on Saturday, and on Monday she broke up with us.
Well, what happened?
She didn't even want to tell the whole group. She told me that I'm a bad Zen student, I'm a bad Zen priest, I'm not worthy of anything, and the group is not worthy of her time, and we are not, basically a complete 180. Up until that point, I was worthy, and and the students were worthy, and suddenly we were not. So I'm not exactly sure how to talk about this.
Well, but what evolved from it?
I invited a number of Suzuki lineage teachers to give us talks Monday evening after Monday evening after Monday evening, and we continued sitting on Sundays. And since I had a large network from living at Tassajara, Green Gulch, and City Center, it wasn't hard for me to find a dozen Zen teachers to come and give us talks. So people were encouraged to continue their Zen practice. And by April, we arranged their Jukai with Colin Gibson.
And from Colleen is situated where?
Colin was practicing at Tassajara when I was there, so that's why I knew him. And he's originally from Texas, but he studied at Michigan, University of Michigan. So it was not so hard to convince him to come and spend the weekend here, meet his friends, have our Jukai ceremonies. And he also did it in November. So we had the ceremonies for almost all of the people who saw together. It's rough to go through that kind of breakup, even when somebody doesn't have to care for other people's practice. But I couldn't really tend to my whatever misery was at the moment, because my focus was just to keep everybody who have sown together and who have practiced together to have enough support and bandwidth and emotional and spiritual support to overcome the disruption, stick with it, and receive Jukai in April.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of this is not abnormal. It's another version, or it's another story of there being inner sangha turmoil as part of one's practice history. I mean, it's just it's just not abnormal.
We would like to think, right, as that we are exempt. These kind of things happen to others.
Right.
This is not happening to us.
Right.
These kind of disruptions are not going to happen to our Sangha, or this kind of breakup is not going to happen to my life, but it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not disturbed by bad news about teachers and from sanghas. I never have been, because we tend to have very idealistic sort of fantasy beliefs, and it helps knock them away. Although I don't pray for difficulties.
If humans are involved, difficulties will happen and they will present themselves, and then we will somehow be present with them or not.
Yeah.
And then we turn our backs or not, and then something will happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you've survived. Jissoji has survived, and you're
interestingly, yes, we did.
And you are not a bitter person. You're very bright and positive.
I have a predilection to not be a bitter person.
Yeah, I can see. Well,
and Ed Brown came back, and Ed Brown appeared in Ann Arbor, and he was the first person after the pandemic to offer the first workshop and the first weekend for Jissoji.
That's wonderful. That's good.
So things are, maybe the arc is long, and maybe we live long enough, and maybe we don't live long enough, but we don't really have an insight of what's good and what's bad and what's fortunate and what's not fortunate anyway. Things just happen. 10 years later, you thought, that was so fortunate. And it turned out it wasn't so fortunate after all. It was so unfortunate. Maybe it was not so unfortunate after all. There is completely no sense of evaluating them based on a very, very limited understanding.
That's well said. Yeah.
So many times I thought, really great. Turns out to be not so great after all. And then after a while, just, okay, it is what it is. We are going to roll with it because that's what it is.
Well,
I consider myself definitely a Suzuki lineage student.
Yeah.
Suzuki Roshi is my grandfather. Ed Brown is my father in this lineage.
Yeah.
I also consider Blanche Hartman my grandmother and Ranshin Buns my mother in the sewing lineage.
Yeah.
And I do see now, after 9 years of Jissoji, that people within the Sangha start to get it, that the way that Suzuki Roshi related to Ed Brown and Ed Brown related to me, I'm relating to them, and they start to see some elements of, oh, is this the same love that was handed down throughout the ages? Yeah. That's the same thing that we have inherited, and we are endeavoring to pass it on.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a trajectory your life has taken and your practice has taken. We've been going on a little while here. How long has this been? I can't see.
It's an hour and 51 minutes, but you're probably going to be able to cut off the first some hour.
No, I don't cut anything out. No, it's all good.
You know that
It's all good.
all these podcasts of yours, when I'm listening to you discussing things with people, and I would bet that even before you started podcasting and you were visiting with guests at Asahara, this is your pastoral care. This is how you are manifesting the Dharma. This is how these people got to see themselves in another light. Isn't that your greatest gift?
I have no idea. I like doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do it
Oh,
wonderfully.
good. Yeah. Oh, well, that's nice to hear. Look, why don't you say something in conclusion? Then I will turn off the recording, and then we need to stay on a little bit because with this program, then it uploads from you and from me, and then makes it available. I don't quite understand it, but do you have anything to say in conclusion?
Yes, you know what I would like to say? That David, the first moment I met you at Asahara and the first CD you gave me without asking any questions about transcripts of Suzuki Roshi's teachings, I always admired your work and how a full circle life takes of we have no great understanding of who becomes a great teacher and a great Dharma heir. And there are so many ways to be a great Dharma heir and so many ways to be a great pastoral presence. And for the early years, you probably were not appreciated for it. And I really hope that in your life, you get to see how much we appreciate it.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I'm. That's all I can say. Thank you very much. Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you for spending 2 hours of your beautiful day.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these podcasts are 2 hours. Your story is unique, and it's I will be reflecting on it. I really appreciate it. So I am going to thank you, Marta Dabis. Am I saying that correctly?
You could say Dabis, you could say Dabis or Davis, or in Hungarian it's none of these, but in America you can say any of them.
Say it in Hungarian.
Dabis Marta.
Oh, Dabis Marta. I like Japanese.
Because the order is different and it's an S, not an S. Dabis Marta. So that's the Hungarian, but I don't use it here because then people cannot write it down.
It's like,
so I say Marta Dabis.
Yeah, Japanese like that. And Hungarian is what is the Hungarian language group? It's Mongolian Hungarian or something. Or
there are some Hanshi-Manshi, yes, in the Ural Mountains that are very old, like thousands of years old language relatives. But in my understanding, when I study Japanese is probably the seventh language that I study. They probably originated in the parts of Asia when one decided to go east and the other decided to go west. Because in logic, there is so much similarity in studying Japanese versus all the Western European languages that I studied.
Well, look, I'm going to hang up here and we can keep talking about this.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Marta Dabis. Appreciate it very much. And we had an abrupt end, sort of like we had an abrupt beginning. Because with the way I recorded, she had to stay on until it uploaded from her computer, which is a bit of a problem. But I have now bought this, once again, too much information. That was Squadcast. I'm with Squadcast, and it's good. But now I have bought Audio Hijack, which is supposed to be the best way to record from a Mac, various things. But right now, Skype, I'm eager to get back to recording Skype. But guess what? Bang, yesterday I learned they're closing down. Microsoft is closing Skype. They're starting a new team something. And it's all because they're not, Zoom beat them out for the really big business of all the meetings and everything, so they're going to try to get it back. And but their Skype, their phone thing is invaluable to zillions of people, and they shouldn't be able to do that. But I've been talking to ChatGPT about it. Now I'll look at other sources. It seems I will be able to continue using Skype. I talk to a lot of people that all they have is phones, or if they have a computer, they hardly know how to use it. Skype is really good, but it's a VoLP, voice over, I don't know, land phones, or got me. There are other VoLPs. I will be familiarizing myself with that, but I will be using Skype as long as I can. Oh, I want to say one thing. This, remember I said something about there being a researcher who developed some sort of computer or pre-computer thing where people were relating to it very early on. Well, here, I just asked ChatGPT what it was. ChatGPT is so good at it. It's a great tool. Look, and I want to tell you, I relate to it as a tool. Nothing personal. I won't, and if you relate to it as a tool, then it's very useful. Also, that's the way I've related to social media. I've never gotten caught up in it, Of course, it's all more friendly and stuff on social media too. But anyway, all these things, I hear people criticizing them with a broad brush, saying, oh, people use it to do this or that, like everybody does that. Like they'd say about social media, oh, yeah, who wants to go on and hear what somebody had for breakfast? Well, there's a lot more to it than that. And it's with us to stay and or to evolve. Yeah, I can't say it's with us to stay. What it is going to evolve, and it's going to keep evolving. It's evolving very fast now. All right, so here's what I wanted to tell you about, because it's sort of cool. So it answers, oh, you're likely thinking of ELIZA, an early natural language processing program created by Joseph Weizenbaum in the 1960s at MIT. ELIZA was designed to simulate conversation by following simple pattern matching rules. The most famous script, Doctor, mimicked a Rogerian psychotherapist by turning user input into open-ended questions. Weizenbaum was shocked to find that even though ELIZA was extremely simple, People quickly believed it was intelligent and even sentient, with some forming emotional attachments. His own secretary reportedly asked him to leave the room so she could have a private conversation with Eliza. Weizenbaum later became critical of AI's role in human relationships, emphasizing that people attribute human qualities to machines too easily. All right. And then it asked me, is this the system you were thinking of? I do not answer it. It asked me, or it'll say, what else can I do to help you? In fact, even sometimes I say, don't do that. Stop doing that. But I've sort of learned what it can and can't stop doing. Anyway, so, you can check Marta out at Marta Dabis Facebook, or you can check Jissoji out at Jissoji, GISSOJIZEN.org. Soto Zen practice in Ann Arbor in the Suzuki Katagiri lineage. Now, that's very interesting. I've never heard anybody refer to the Suzuki Katagiri lineage, and that could be criticized, or there could be those that disagree, but I don't. I think that's very fair because there's so much, what would you say? There's so much intermingling in the Suzuki and the Katagiri lineages, and they were so close, and they were together so much, that I think that's very interesting. So I put my stamp of approval on it. So anyway, Marta, it was great talking with you. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you the best. Until we meet again, this is DC. Poobah, Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Dogget Bandita, Feline Manis, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.